welcome to episode 29 of Nuggets Dungeon Terrain, and what will be the second last in the series where I'm creating a chaos-themed dungeon. So here I've added 3 rooms, and we're going to take a closer look at each one. The first one started with the inspiration of finding these pins with the pyramid-shaped tops. Felt like there was some opportunity to have them coming out of the walls, rust them up a little bit, and integrate them with the same effect that I used in some of the other rooms, with the living walls created using a medium artist gel. In some of these shots you can see that I've gone quite heavily on the wall with the effect, and after sticking it to the base I've tried to integrate it by bringing some extra gel effect from the wall across the corner and onto the floor. I've been wanting to work with something for a while where I could do a rust effect, so I could use these paints that I picked up somewhere. They work particularly well and are interestingly quite different in nature to all of the acrylic paints that I have in my collection. And you can see in these loaded up pictures that the room gives quite a good claustrophobic effect with those steel prisms closing in around the characters, while at the same time there's actually a decent amount of space to still be able to move and manipulate the pieces. So moving on to the second tile in this episode, and of course not everything could be a major set piece, and this one's just a corridor tile. On this occasion I'm going for a T-junction and using one of the effects that crosses over thematically between tiles in this set, which is the use of lava. So here I've marked out the T-junction and I'm just using a thin hot wire tool to carve out the areas that are going to have lava. These have found a way of melting and forcing a way through the tiles that already existed in the room. And now we're about to jump forward and have a look at the piece after it's been finished, painted and laid several times with inks, very similar to the other pieces in this series. So if you want to see and understand a little bit more about that, just watch back through the last few episodes. So here comes the third and final piece of this episode. This is another passage tile, and this time I'm going to add some acid effects, and out of the acid pool there are going to be some tentacles rising up. You can see where the main pool of acid is going to be, and I started off the acid wear by applying some acetone. Unfortunately, this style of XPS foam that I'm using is a little bit resistant to acetone compared with some others, so I'm also going to have to use another burning technique to make some of these holes deeper. So with the next few cuts we're going to jump forwards and backwards in time with the project. Here's a look at it when it's finished, and you can see the tentacles coming up out of the pool. The tentacles are made using air dried clay. Quite a bit of shaping was just done using a toothpick. And just going back now, so you can see that I'd finished the basic form and undercoat of the tentacles and glued them into that puddle, and then filled up the puddle with 2-part epoxy, which had just been tinted with a colour that I wanted to use. Worth noting on the middle right there is that some of that purple paint was still just a little bit runny, and the heat and moisture of the epoxy brought the worst out of it and left a little purple streak going across. I had to go back later and just add a little touch of paint there to cover up that streak. And here I'm just using a toothpick to move the epoxy into the corners of the hollow and try and work out some of the air bubbles as we go. Because this is the cheap $2 version of epoxy, I knew that I was going to end up with some fairly nasty bubbles coming up through the model as I went along, so I just kept an eye on it, tried to manipulate it as much as possible while it was drying, but later added some Mod Podge two-dimensional magic to the air pockets that had formed. So most of the detail on the tentacles is on the underside. In order to show you that, I need to tilt the model, and now of course the camera's having trouble deciding whether it's going to focus on the foreground or the background, so it's a little difficult to see, sorry. And one last look at the tentacles here, which as I speak is reminding me that I haven't gloss varnished them to make them appear a little shinier. So I'm off to do that now. I'll catch you next time. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and like.